Hello, welcome to the October 14th, 2022 Club Cubase livestream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we will begin. Bear with me just for a moment. Make sure I'll check on my monitoring computer. Okay, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. My name is Greg Undo. I'm the host for the live stream. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field, or you could basically just send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Excuse me. We will try to go through each of the questions chronologically as asked. And when asking questions, if you could specify which level of Cubase it is, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Artist, Elements, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, which version number, such as 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system, that information is often helpful. If you, when asking questions, realize I don't have the ability to keep up with it live, so it may take a little while for me to actually get to the particular question. But if we could avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that'd be appreciated. It just kind of slows down the whole process. And I just want to give a special thanks to some people that help out. We should have an index of all the topics covered with timestamps that will be pinned to the top of the comments field tonight, so you can navigate. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in other live streams, and it's over 21,000 questions, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm, who's on, has been kind enough to create kind of a searchable database, so you could just immediately type in a topic and go directly to the part of the live stream. So I want to give special thanks to Jan. We have two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees, but they help out tremendously, making a wonderful place for the live stream and making it better for the community. We want to give a special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude for their efforts. I'm so appreciative. And also, if you wanted to check out different additional resources of information for Cubase and Steinberg products, check out Jazz Dude has done a tremendous work on compiling information in the Cubase Nation Discord. So we want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for that. This is since COVID has started, this is our 250th live stream. I want to thank everyone for making it such a wonderful live streaming community. And I think in about 2 hours, we're going to give away 5 prizes. So we'll have different software that Steinberg has donated, and this could be an update, maybe a different program. It really depends on what you have. So we don't want to necessarily give away a Cubase update if you have version 12. So we'll get a prize to the winners, and we're going to ask just some different trivia questions. So I'll try to do that in about 2 hours. But just I was going through some analytics for the Club Cubase just this morning, and kind of thinking about 250 or 250th live stream. So if you're curious, here's a couple of interesting analytics. So we've had 2,678,587 views. It's amounted to 1,425,238 hours of viewed content just on the live stream. So I think that's 165 years. The average view time for this year is over 45 minutes per video. We have a very even age range. So from 18 to 24, it's 12.8%, 25 to 34-year-olds, 23.6%, 35 to 44-year-olds, 23.7%, 45 to 54 is 19.4%, 55 to 64 is 12.8%, and 65 and older is 7.4%. Some of the top cities for viewing the live streams are London, New York, Los Angeles, Berlin, Stockholm, and Hamburg, followed by Iwa Beach. It seems odd. It's I had to look it up. It's a small town in Hawaii, in near Honolulu. So let's go ahead and go through our questions. I'm going to break out my chat. So thanks again. I really am so appreciative to help with doing these live streams, helping people get stuff done with their Steinberg. So let's go ahead and get started. And in about 2 hours, we know some people are getting off work and some people will try to do some of the trivia questions then. So I'm going to break out my chat and we will begin. All right. So the first question is, and I'm also presenting from Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. area. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating. Okay, so we have from Three Dog Recording Studio. Hello, Greg. Can you please show me how to use hit points to be able to add a sample to a kick drum? I couldn't find where to turn audio into MIDI in Pro 12. It's different than Pro 11. Thank you, Andy. All right, so if I have an audio track here, so say I have drums, like a kick drum, and let's say I have a MIDI track with an instrument loaded, and I have some different drum sounds here. So to kind of take the kick drum sound and have it trigger, I'm going to just leave this track selected, but we don't necessarily have to do that. So I'm going to go into the hit points. And what we want to do is just double click on like our kick part. We'll go to the hit points tab. And as we do this, we want to edit the hit points, and we're going to just, simply adjust the threshold level so that we're getting the kicks and not necessarily other tracks that are kind of carried over, like maybe they're bleeding in like snares or hi-hats. And then the thing that's changed from version 11 to 12 is this little create tab. At this point, you can open that up and say, we want to create MIDI notes. So I want to create and retain the original dynamic velocities. We could have it on a new MIDI track. I'm just going to put it onto the first selected MIDI track where I have this instrument. We'll hit OK. So now the kick is just laid out for us. And if I do the right pitch this time, that would help instead of snares. So we'll just do this process one more time. So hit points, MIDI notes, and I'll just put it on C1, hit OK. So now as we play. So I'll mute the original kicks as audio, or blend it in with the samples. So probably the thing that's changed from 11 to 12 is when you're in the hit points tab that you have this little create. So you could just come right over here and open up the create and choose MIDI notes there. All right, so we see a question from PM. It says, hi, Greg, could you please help me? Cubase 12 starts very slow. It hangs by initializing the Rolly C board. The Rolly software is up to date. What can I do? So if you notice that it's going to, if you notice that it's, if it boots up, faster without the Rolly C board connected, then sometimes, that we could isolate it to the Rolly C board. I have on my PC, I have one MIDI controller that, when connected in through a hub, if it's not externally powered with like a 5-volt power supply, that it will just kind of make my computer open up and run very slowly. And I think it's just to deal with the power management on a USB hub. So if you're connecting it into a USB hub, you could try to make sure that it's a powered USB hub that could, one that has a plug and is not just kind of drawing power from a USB port that's then split and drawing power to multiple devices. And I think that will probably do the trick for you. So, connect it directly to the computer and see if that makes a difference, or connect it to a powered USB hub if you're have it with a particular, if you have it with being connected to a hub. All right. Wonderful to see Captain Energy music. And he says he loves the new ethnic string phrases, so I haven't got that yet. So we say Aubrey just saying unbelievable. Greg 250th live streaming. Thanks. We could only do it with attendees. So, all right, and we have Robbie Bowling checking in from Dallas, and he was also responsible when YouTube changed a bunch of stuff to always send me an email saying he wanted the live streams back. So I want to give special thanks to Robbie for the encouragement to do that. Okay, so we have a question from the Lunatic Voice. Hello, Greg. Could you explain how to detect the time of an instrumental? I don't know why it's so complicated in Cubase. And in Logic, it makes it so easy. Thank you very much. All right, so I think it's pretty easy in Cubase as well. So let's say if we have, and we could do this for a instrumental, whether it's MIDI or audio. So let's just say I want to just take a recording that doesn't have any steady tempo. Is just, let's say, just recorded free. So I hear my click track, but the metronome is not aligned to it. So really in Cubase, all you have to do is select the event, go to your project menu and choose tempo detection. You'll be able to click on the analyze button. And now as you play, it's created the tempo map for you automatically. So select the event, go to project, and then just choose tempo detection. So let me know if that works for you. That's from the Lunatic Voice. All right. All right, we have Adrian De Leon saying hello. Thanks for being here. All right, and we have Paul the guitarist, a fellow Virginian. So I believe, if memory serves me right, he's in Lynchburg. As I told him before, I used to play in the symphony there. All right, so we see Benny and Stefan from Sweden, and we have Val Y42 Lee checking in from Vienna. Sable Winters, thanks from the Bay Area. All right, and we have Cooper Jan or Cooper Jan from Belgium. All right, we have Madge Deepers from the UK. We have Soren from Sweden. Nick is number 23 on whacking the like button. All right, so we have Jean-Marie Horvat on. All right. So wonderful. Jean-Marie's an amazing engineer. All right. Glad to have you on. All right, so we have the wonderful Clay Ostwald. So if you liked all the amazing Gloria Estefan tracks, it's Clay is responsible for that. So he's just saying congrats on 250. So it says, I bet with your in-person Club Cubase, it's been thousands. So I think at one point I had counted like about 2,400 before live stream of in-person events over the years. All right. And we have our Steven Music from Jakarta, Indonesia. All right. We have Azalea Music, Fett from Nashville. Thanks for joining us, Fett. All right. And Three Dog Recording Studios from Riverside, California. All right, we have Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. Thanks for being able to join us. Nice comment from Clay. It says, your commitment to the customer/user is completely unique and valuable. Thank you so much. And Clay is one of my first rock star friends. So he's incredibly humble, but everything Clay touches always sounds magical. So I'm happy to be his friend. Okay, so you see a question. Hi, Greg. I switched from 11 to 12, and unfortunately, my template doesn't work anymore. Template has property that I combine all effects returns to a group in order to edit them further. When exporting stems, I group tracks together and then select multiple export option with all audible elements. All works wonderfully in 11. Sadly, all effects returns are missing in 12 and afterwards. All right, so let me just come to a project here, and I think I may have one that's kind of set up for this. So there was a slight change in from 11 to 12 with this. So I think I have something kind of set up here. Okay. Okay, so all right, so let's say I have different effects here. So let's say I have my drums going to a drum group, and then I have a guitar group. So, you know, what would often happen in the past is if we wanted to, in version 11, like if I wanted to export a group that was going to the same reverb, what would happen is we'd export. So if I exported the drums with effects, what would happen, let me just come here. So let's say I exported the drum group. What would happen is we would have the other groups that were feeding the same reverb also be exported. So if I had the same reverb on the guitars that were routed to the guitar group and drums that were routed to the drum group, that when we exported the drums, the reverb would automatically be carried over, and that behavior has changed. But so let's say if I just wanted to take my drum group here in this, let me just set my export range. And so if I wanted to take this, we'll go to our file to export audio mixdown and say, okay, I want to do my guitar group, and we'll just export it and place it in an audio track. All right, so now like the guitars aren't bleeding through when they're going to the same effect send. So that was the only difference. But maybe if you wanted to send me a project, I could check kind of your routing, but make sure that when you are exporting that you come over, and as we come over here to effects, that you include like your groups and effect sends right there. So make sure that you have that selected. But that was the only change from 11 to 12 was really to maintain the effects not from other sources bleeding in just because they shared a common effect send. All right. We see Steve Moulton's just saying kind words for the live stream. Thank you very much. All right. So we have a question. Is there a way to make the track project audible while being on Talkback? Thank you, Greg. All right. So let's say I'm playing. All right, so when we're here, let's say we have our track going. I'll just mute these. And if you click on the main button in the control room, so when I hit the Talkback, you have a Talkback dim button. So a lot of times you may have the track dimmed all the way down to infinity, but you could also just raise that. So when Talkback is turned on, now you could just say, so say while you're talking back, if you want the track to be dimmed down, so when Talkback is enabled, you could still hear it just like that. So make sure you click on the main to reveal parameters below, and then you could adjust the Talkback dim. So let me know if that will work for you. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. All right. All right, so we have a question. If I select 3 different instrument tracks, play a melody, then hit retrospective record button, can I get the MIDI to appear on all 3 of the tracks at the same time, or it will only appear on one? Let's give it a shot. I think it will go on all 3, but we'll find out. Let me just go to different project. All right, so let's say I have a Rhodes patch, maybe a bass, and drums. So I will just come over here and let's say, all right, and then I'm just going to hit the retrospective record. So it looks like, let me just turn the auto quantize off. And I'm going to just select all 3 tracks. So it looks like it only does it for one, but you could easily just come here, hold down your Alt key. And if you wanted to lock it in time, so if you move it down first, hold down Control, and then you could only, then you won't be able to move it in time. So it looks like it's only going to be placed onto like the top track. Sorry about that, but it's easy enough to kind of copy. Okay. Wonderful to see Peter from Montreal. Gerald Ely just saying I have to leave in an hour, so I'm going to miss the contest. So maybe we could do it a little. I'll see if we can maybe get it in about maybe at top of the hour, an hour in, so Gerald can be on. So. All right. So you see Jazz Dude saying the IP in Honolulu are the bots, I bet. So it could be. And there's another one from Nampaw, Idaho. So that could make sense as well. So. All right, and we see Jack Shot Records just saying congratulations, thank you. We see Tiago from Brazil. All right, so Tim Weinheimer says, thanks, Greg, for the help on Tuesday. Did the trick. So I think that was with his Arturia controller, the transports transmitting Midi notes. All right, so we have Benny from London. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Daniela just says, hi, Guy. My husband did have success with Cubase in a Docker running as a virtual machine. That's great. Thanks for letting us know. All right, so we have a question. Hi, how do you select the upper divide track list with the main arrangement session below the divide track list and copy and paste in both lists at the same time? So once it's kind of broken up, so let's say if we come over here and we do a divided track list, so I'll just enable our divided track list. So once you're here, it's kind of, you're either in one zone or the other zone. So if you wanted to copy data, let's say if I take a MIDI track up here and I wanted to copy this, okay, so to do the divided track list, if you're not familiar with that, is just hitting the little divide icon here. So let's say, and I think another part of the question was, I want to take, let's see if we could select both tracks in an upper and lower zone. So I'm going to copy this event. And let's see if I could paste. So it looks like you'd have to paste them separately because they are kind of treated as independent timelines there. So, but I'll try just one more time, just make sure I'm not doing anything goofy. So let's say if I select maybe the track, copy, and we'll select these two. So once you make one the active part, but they are divided and will be kind of treated independently. So Claudio is just saying, congrats, Greg. Next step, 500 live streams. So yeah, maybe about 2.5 years. See, Norton Wade just says, how did you all determine ages? So it's just kind of the analytics for, it might be it's done through YouTube for that. So it might be with your ID that you set up or your account that you watch. That would be my assumption. All right, so we see Graham Gardner checking in from Yorkshire, UK. All right, so we see Madge Deeper saying, with release of Studio 1.6, she's tempted to go back as she knows it more in Cubase. Why should I stay with Cubase, in your honest opinion? So I think Cubase is obviously a lot more depth to it. And, it's going to be the company that actually comes up with all of the concepts that are often kind of copied by other companies. Steinberg's been a long time pioneer, and we also do these live streams where you get your questions answered all the time regularly. So, but if you have like particular questions, just feel free to ask us, Madge. We'll be happy to help you out. All right, so we see added my XP30 as an external instrument. It works great recording and playing back MIDI. However, when I try to render in place, nothing happens in Cubase 12. So I don't have a device connected here. an external device on my machine. But one thing that you could try also is I'm not sure if you're just doing the render in place, or you could also try just to go to the file menu and choose export audio mixdown and see if it's included there. So if you're doing it via render in place, generally it's going to do it in real time, and I've done that a number of times in the past. And it could be where you might have to choose complete signal path here. So I'm not sure if you're doing a render in place, but see if you actually at that point, if you export audio mixdown for the project, and then if you wanted to just try to solo a particular instrument, you could do that and see if that renders for you. All right, so we have Matt Elder checking in from Canada. All right, and we have someone from Iraq. Thank you for joining us. Nick is online. All right, so we see from Robbie Bowling, what kind of variety in guitar amps come stock in Cubase? Looking for clean tube type for my pedal steel, Tele, Gretsch guitars. So let's go ahead, and I think I have a guitar project that we could open up. All right, so let's say, so this is kind of a typical kind of, we'll listen to a couple of the different tones here. So let's say, okay, if we bypass just, so kind of typical Les Paul, back pickup, so kind of, so you'll have different amplifiers. So you have kind of classic, you could probably get a sense of like what amplifiers they are. And we'll try a couple. So let's say more. So here we'll have our different amplifiers, plus different cabinets, pedals. So here's a Tele. It's this is kind of an overdriven Tele sound, kind of classic Marshall. So say if I want to come here, kind of a classic Vox. Say even with like tremolo on, so it's dry. say, okay, let's make this more of a 412 cabinet. 212 Fender. So all sorts of great overdrive stuff. So there's a lot of great varieties there in the amp rack. So you could mix and match different amplifiers to cabinets, pedals, microphone placement, and set up your configuration. So there's a lot of wonderful options in there. All right, so we have a question from Tiago. Is there a difference between the de-esser as a plugin or channel strip? When I look into Mix Console, latency is shown in the channel latency when I add the DSS, I guess DSSer as a plugin. But when I add a strip, the latency is not shown. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I think it's basically the same processing. So let's take a look and go to, oh, sorry about that. Okay, and let's come over here to the inserts. And it could be that maybe there's yeah. So I think it's the same algorithm, but maybe because it's part of the channel strip, it might be lower latency. And let me just see. And probably what it is, it might be set to live mode on the channel strip. So let's say if I set this to live mode in the de-esser plugin, we could see that that goes away. So probably the channel strip will default to live mode. So it may take a little more CPU, but minimizes the latency. All right, so we have Tommy Bird checking in from Austin, Texas. All right, so we have a question from Leo. How to activate the master level control? All right, so let's say if we're in a project. Okay, so, and let's say if we have our mixer, so, you know, if we're doing this, we have our master fader here. So if we wanted to adjust the master fader, if you want to do this on the project window for like automation, if you go to the input output folder, we could just see your stereo out. And then if you wanted to do automation, at that point, you could just see it automatically follow the automation that's drawn in. So see, it's going to get louder. So let me know if that's, so you could either automate it directly from here and then it could show up, but it's kind of usually by default in the input outputs folder. If you wanted to just add automation, then you should see all the inputs and outputs that are defined in your system. Then you could open up the automation lane to just draw in automation. So let me know if that's helpful. All right. Okay. All right. And we have Luca joining us from Munich, Germany. Thanks for being on. All right. And we have Duende Media on as well. Okay, so we have Nick. Question: 2 audio files. No clue what the tempo of either of them. Is it possible to make them both play back at the same tempo? I thought it was, but I can't remember easily way because brain cramp. And also, I just see, thank you, Greg, but my question, I think we could solve this with same aspects. So it says, thank you, Greg. My question about the time detection of an instrumental in which the time often varies, and I would like to know how to mark a constant time. Thank you. All right, so we could kind of kill two birds with one stone here. So let's say if we go back, I think we still have our tempo detection here. So we see that we've detected a tempo that has varying, file that has varying tempos. I'll activate the project so we can hear it. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of mark the downbeat here. All right, so if this tempo has different files, different tempo fluctuations, and we want it to be steady, go to now Audio to Advanced and just say set definition from tempo. And we could do this and store this in the project only, or we could actually write all the information into the audio file. So once we have this information, and if we had two different files, we would do this for two different files. And then we could just say, okay, I want this to not follow the tempo changes. I want it to be a steady value. So I'll say, let's make this 152. So we can see the original tempo here. And now if I want it to be steady, now it's playing back a perfectly steady tempo. If I activate the tempo track, we could have that automatically follow the original tempo, and we could edit this tempo information as well. So if I wanted to just go to the edge here and kind of tighten it up and lower it some, or if I want it to be a perfectly steady tempo. So that's really all you'd have to do is, once you have that set, just go, select the event or events. And if you had two events, just, again, select both of the events. And sometimes if it's two different events, I would put it maybe like one event here, so that they could have their different tempos. And then, once you put them, it'll automatically be placed in musical mode. But once you have the tempo detected, again, go to your audio menu to Advanced and choose set definition from tempo. And then all the tempo information is embedded. And then it could automatically comply to a steady tempo for one file or multiple files. See a nice message from John Costigan of congratulations on the Hangouts. It says, I don't think I've missed many. So you're always a great presence on the Hangouts, John, from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right. All right, my chat field jumped. All right. See, Tiago's just mentioning 250 live streams. Wow, saves a lot of brain cramp, time, and money. Thanks, Steinberg and Greg. What a great community. So, all right. So we see from Tommy Bird, having trouble adding instrument track for CS80 synth that shows in VST Manager plugin list, but not an option in adding instrument track. I've searched it again and again. So if I don't have the Arturia instrument on mine, but check to make sure first that if you go to the studio menu and you go to the VST plugin manager, so you're saying it shows there, and make sure that you're looking at it in the instrument tab. But anything that's showing there should automatically be able to see here. So look to see if you go to the media and then choose VST instruments if you see it listed here. Sometimes what happens is the instruments can sometimes just get into a different area. So while going to add an instrument track, so let's say, okay, I want to add, it could be maybe that the source is kind of just hidden, or maybe it went into like a subfolder of a folder. So one way to kind of mitigate that is if it's in a subfolder is maybe just come here and type in CS80 at the top. And if it's kind of hidden in a particular folder, then it should be exposed. So if I just type in retro, and then it should be able to find it right there. If you still don't see it as a plugin, make sure that, some instruments will also allow you to have it run as an audio effect as well. Like if you want to send audio into filters. So when you do go into the plugin manager, go to the VST plugin manager. And if you go to make sure that you're seeing it in the instruments tab and not the effects tab here as well. But as soon as you see it, you could select it here, and then that will show you if it's kind of hidden within a folder, and that may give you an idea of the location. So give those things a try. All right, so we have Jerome Gibson checking in. Glad you can make it today. Sable Winters saying congratulations for the amazing analytics on the Hangouts. Yeah, sometimes interesting to take a look at. All right, so Milan asked, what are limitations in functionality for mixed console snapshots to be aware of? So a lot of times when you are using mixed console snapshots, I will kind of utilize it before going into a lot of automation, because just like a picture doesn't necessarily capture, like motion, snapshot is just going to be able to take just a particular snapshot. So if you have automation, it's not going to carry over with all the automation. So just that's kind of the one thing that, and understandably it's a picture, it's not a snap, it's not a motion shot with all of that. But, if you have, a lot of times what I will do when working with like mixed console snapshots, I will just come over here. Let's select kind of all the tracks, and I'll just do a quick link and bring them down. So let's say if I'm here and I'm just kind of starting a mix, I'll just say, okay, let's just take. Okay, now I want to take like my kick. I'll just turn this off, and I'll just kind of build up a quick mix. Sometimes you may get a mix, and then by the time you're like get into it, you're like, okay, we got this going on. All right, now I want to pan those, let's say, okay. So say, you just kind of set a basic mix here. Then you could just take a snapshot. And then you could, at this point, say, okay, I'm going to take a completely different type of mix. And then you could take a snapshot of that. And then if you wanted to just jump back to your first snapshot, or go to your second snapshot. So I will often kind of just start a project and I'll just kind of do a mix, take it all down and do another mix. And then you can say, oh, I really like the second mix, but I want to actually use the bass from snapshot 1 into, let's say, mix snapshot, where let's say we're in mix snapshot 2, but I want the bass from snapshot 1. So I'm going to go to my recall settings. I'm going to say, let's take the selected channel, and I only want to carry over, I don't want to carry over inserts, but my pre-filters, gain. So now I could just select one track from another snapshot and come over here and just do a recall of that. So we'll just say recall 1, and then you could just do one single track at a time. But the one thing that, if you have a lot of automation already, the snapshots don't play well with existing automation. So do it before you get into a lot of automation. All right, so we have a question. Could you explain what... all right, so let me just... could you explain what the Azio latency compensation button does on each individual channel in the mix window? Also, for some reason, this is active on many channels in my session. All right, so it could be once we are, let's say we're in our mix console here, what the Azio delay compensation allows you to do, and we could set it globally here in the bottom left-hand corner, is as we're tracking plugins, or like as we're recording, if we have plugins, each of the plugins can take different amounts of latency. And sometimes, when you have a very complex plugin like a multiband compressor, that could take more time to process dynamics and dividing the frequency range on different, so, and the tax of having, that heavy duty complex processing is latency. So that's the cost of it. So when people sometimes have a big mix and they need to record maybe at the very end, like, oh, let's do another guitar solo, let's do another vocal part right here. But we have a full mix built with a lot of heavy plugins. Instead of going through and isolating particular plugins and finding out all the plugins that are imposing latency, that what you could do is just come over here and hit the delay compensation button. And what this will do is that will bypass all of the plugins during, so that the plugins that are causing latency above a certain threshold, and you could set the threshold inside of the preferences, will be turned off. So one quick way of being able to is like, okay, I want to track, but I don't want all of my master effects processing. I don't want all of my heavy duty plugins to be throwing off the monitoring signal for the performer. So instead of having to go through each one, we could also just come right over here and be able to do it globally. Or we could choose to do it on a particular track as well. So that's the idea behind it. It just makes it easier to record with plugins. All right, so wonderful to see the Cube back from San Diego. All right, and the Cube asks, how do you use Scale Assistant to change an entire MIDI performance to a new scale or to adjust specific scale and value and then humanize the velocity values? Okay, so let me just... Okay, so let's say we want to just come over here and we could, let's just, all right, so we'll check, we'll play just this event here. So let's say, all right, so at this point, if I wanted to fit a particular scale, you could say, okay, I want this to fit G sharp, and then we'll just choose G sharp major, and then at this point, so once we're in our scale assistant, you know, one is we could actually just say, okay, I want to go to G sharp major, and this will give you different scale suggestions. So just by looking at the part. So, but let's say I wanted to quantize the notes to G sharp major. So now when I hit quantize pitches, all of the pitches will now fit the particular scale for you. Okay, and if you wanted to humanize the velocity values of this, if we just come over to, so within the editor, there's a couple of different ways of doing this. So let's just say, okay, so if we want to do like the velocities, we could do this on the actual part. So let's say I'll just put this into a quick loop. And then if we go to, you right click, and then you'll see Midi Modifiers. And here, if we wanted to randomize, let's say velocity between so we'll say between that you could now just kind of randomize velocities. You could also do this quite easily using the logical editor. So if I was looking at velocity here, and at this point, if we go to the logical editor, you could just do setup, and we'll say value 2. And you could just say we want to take, so choose transform. And then you can say set random values between 80 and 100. And now you could just kind of watch. Here, let me just. Let's make it a MIDI note. So now I could just randomize velocities just like that. So as you hit apply, and if you wanted to, okay, I want this to be 60 and 100. But there's a number of different, so once you're also just here, you could just choose to randomize velocity, position, or pitch as well. All right, so we see, hi Greg, greetings from Rome, Italy. Is there a specific latency time value that triggers the need for constrained delay compensation on? Thank you and cheers. Still Claudio in disguise. All right, so it's actually, it can be set by the user. So I don't remember what the default value was. So maybe 20 milliseconds is the delay compensation threshold for recording. So it's just set in preferences to VST. So you could just set the value there. So if you wanted it lower or higher, you could just simply adjust. John Costigan says, if you learn a tip or trick, please press the like button. It pays the rent. All right. All right, and we have Ralph Lyle checking in from Toronto. Thanks for joining us. All right. So we have a question from Stefan. It says, how to draw in pitch bend automation with a smooth curve in the MIDI editor, just like automation on a project window where you could see the curve. I get a step resolution depending on the quantize set. Okay, so I'll make my MIDI editor larger here. Let's open up, let's say, our pitch bend, and this was kind of changed in version 11. So let's say you may, like, as you go to draw in, you may have different curves. So, but what you want to do is if you go to, I think, this little menu here, you could choose whether, so just click right here, and then you'll see type of new controller events, step or ramp. So it could be that maybe that you're doing step, and then it will just, draw in steps. So especially depending on your quantize values. So choose this, and this works for any of the controllers. So click again just to the right, little drop down menu to the plus sign, and then you could just choose to have that ramp. Okay, so now I could just say, okay, I want this value here, and now I just want it to ramp automatically. And if you want to do more Bezier curves, you could adjust accordingly like that. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we have Camille checking in from the Czech Republic. Thanks for joining us. See Robbie Bowling saying, thanks, Greg. Those are great choices. All right, we have a question from Patrick Emmanuel A. Greg, I recorded MIDI notes, but how do I change that to the same length like I played piano, and I want to make all the notes dotted 16th notes? Explain about note length quantization. Okay, so let's say I have phrases here, and these are roughly 16th notes, 8th notes mostly, but let's say I wanted to make all of these notes be a dotted 16th note. So I'm going to change my quantize value here to dotted 16th. Go to, and then if I just select all the notes, we'll come over here, go to edit, to quantize, and we'll go to advanced quantize. And then we could just quantize the MIDI event lengths. So now all the notes are dotted. So let's say if I want to make these all dotted 8th notes instead. So we could just select all. So we don't want to quantize the ends of the notes, but we want to quantize just the length. Go to edit to advanced quantize, quantize MIDI event lengths. And now all the notes are now set to dotted 8th note. So once again, go to edit to advanced quantize and choose quantize MIDI event lengths. So if you do the ends, they'll just kind of snap the ends to the grid, but you want to choose MIDI note lengths. All right. All right. So we see just from Valley, question, could you please show again the resolution settings? Can't find them. Let me just see if I could remind myself which resolution. If I scroll up. Also, I want to say hi to Edward James, checking in from Akron. All right, so I'm not sure which resolution settings. Maybe if you could let me know, Vali. All right. Okay. So you have how to convert audio into MIDI. So probably the easiest way to do this, we could do it with monophonic sources. So let's say if I wanted to take like an audio file here, what I could do, if it's a monophonic source like a voice, it doesn't do polyphonic. And then if we go to Very Audio, we could go to our Edit Very Audio. And then once in the Very Audio, you'll see functions. So what we could do now is just come right over here and extract MIDI. And we could put it onto a new track. And then we could just have the MIDI data and our Very Audio data. So go into sample editor to Very Audio, activate it, and then you'll see choose functions, and then you could extract MIDI. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce. All right, it seems like he's finished his session. That's great. All right, so a question says, why Cubase send random MIDI notes to VST instruments? It is during mixdown or after pressing play. It is random. My way to fight it is do automation on channel faders. Sometimes it will ruin mixdown. This bug is for a very long time. Any advice? So I haven't had Cubase send random MIDI notes. Sometimes when I get questions like this, it could be related. If you're using a MIDI keyboard also as kind of like a control surface, what I would do is, you'll see if you have it set up to map transport functions or other things, but if you go to, when you hit the transport, the controller is actually sending a MIDI note message. So what you may want to do is to go to your MIDI port setup, and if you wanted to just come here and say, this is our control input that I don't want the transport to send MIDI notes to my tracks. So if you have a controller that's sending out, transport controls and other control functions, make sure that you turn it off in the MIDI port setup so it's not being sent to in all MIDI inputs. And if you want to send me a project that it's happening on, I'd be happy to take a look. You can send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we have Michael Pierce question. I'm sure I've seen this somewhere before. Is there a quick way to take a bunch of tracks, possibly with no input set, and simply populate them with every input from 1 through 64 consecutively? Yeah, so we'll show you that. So let's do a new project. All right, and I'll add, let's say 8 audio tracks. All right, and I'm going to go into my audio connections and add 8 inputs. So say I have 8 mono inputs. All right, so hit add bus. Let's make these mono inputs now. Okay, so I want to assign kind of sequentially all of these inputs into, we see that all the tracks are set to no bus currently. So I'm going to select all of the tracks, and the very top one, I'm going to hold down the shift key, and we'll say mono in. So now when I come over, we see mono in. Oh, let me see. Thought it was a shift key. All right, let me try it on the main mix console here. Thought it was... I think it's generally just a shift key. Let me just try another modifier. Maybe it's not working. Yeah, so I think it is generally the shift key that does it, but it doesn't seem to be working. So, and let me see if it makes any difference, if there's any inputs, any physical connections on it. All right. Yeah, so it's usually the shift key that does it. I'll check it out and pass it along, so you make sure if it's not working. But try the shift key, Michael, and see if that does it. That's usually the default key for doing that. And Alt or Option plus Shift will set it to the same value. All right, so we see Graham Witcher from Royal Wooten Bassett. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question. Just says, all right, so I see a stem export file, so thanks for sending that. Question, can you explain the differences between 64-bit floating point and 32-bit floating point recording options? Okay, so if we are recording 24-bit, if we have 24-bit converters and we wanted to have extra space within the audio file to accommodate different mix, like different effects and processing, that's when it can make sense to record in 32-bit floating point. So you actually have additional like space for the information of like effects that could be rendered into the file to live in. And why we went to 64-bit floating point was because, you know, with the AXR4 interface about 3 or 4 years ago when it was released, and our URC interfaces, they actually record 32-bit integer. So it's a 32-bit analog to digital converter. So at that point, if you record at 32-bit integer, you'd want to have 64-bit floating point so that more information could be applied within the 32-bit integer recording. So 32-bit integer and 32-bit floating point, even though they sound very similar, are very different. So most audio interfaces don't have 32-bit converters. So if your interface does, to work with it, you need 64-bit floating point to accommodate the extra information introduced during the mix engine. And we could set it up, you know, even if you're, and as we do effects processing and different mixes, you could switch between, if you go to the audio system, you could choose the processing precision to be 32-bit or 64-bit float. There is an audible difference. I did a test with a blind mastering engineer friend of mine, and he was immediately able to tell, and he has ridiculously good ears, probably some of the best ears in the world as a human being. And he could tell a difference immediately. He couldn't quite tell what was different about it, but he preferred the 64-bit floating point. So that's why we kind of give the options, and we added the 64-bit floating point when we added interfaces and a capability of recording into 32-bit integer. All right, so we see someone who just came out to the old clinics we used to do at Bellevue American Music. Yeah, I miss seeing Reese and all the guys there. So keep in touch with Reese on Facebook. I guess he's in San Diego. But yeah, it's glad you could join us. I miss doing clinics there. And as I should point out, as Jazz Dude is so diligently done, that there is currently a Nuendo promotion going on. So we can, so if you're looking to get into Nuendo, you can get it for 50% off. So check that out. All right, so we have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. And the virtual ice cream has gone. Okay, so we see, from Val Lee just saying, where can I find the threshold settings for the latency delay compensation? So again, it's going to be preferences. Thanks for clarifying for me. And go to VST, and then you'll see the delay compensation threshold for recording. So preferences, select VST, and then you'll see the setting right there. Okay. So we have a question. Is it possible to activate or deactivate a track with a shortcut? So yeah, it's going to be when you go to, let's say your key commands, it's found under the audio. So we'll come over here, go to audio, and then you'll see, I think it's enable, disable, enable track. So at this point, you could just do disable, enable track right there, and then you can set a key command to go directly there. All right, you see Gerald Ely has to take off to meet an old friend, so thanks for joining us. Excuse me. All right, so we have a question. Okay, sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right, just trying to find I see I have lots of questions in my future here. All right. Okay, so we have a question from the Heartbreak Time Machine. How do I map a MIDI input to two VSTs at the same time, i.e. Hallian and Pad Shop? Okay, so I'll just jump back to a different project here. I think I have both of those loaded. Okay, so let's say at this point I have, I'll just revert it. Okay, so I have a Rhodes that's going in through Hallian Sonic SE. And And let's say I have a synth bass that's going through Retrolog. So, and I have one MIDI controller, and I have both of these set up for all MIDI inputs. So I'm going to select and activate record on both of these. I'll just solo this. So, and as I hit record, and now when we go to play back, we can see that it's recorded onto both tracks. And as we listen to it, of course, I had my auto quantize enabled by accident, but you could just, that's how you record on two different instrument tracks at once from the same recorder, from the same MIDI keyboard rather. All right, so we have TG Kawikachu says, longtime Cubase user, finally deciding to join a Cubase live stream. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you on. All right, so we have Steve Cummings, I believe, SR Cummings from Nashville, wonderful drummer and friend of the band Kicks. Gotta like that. Okay, so we see question on chord track, dragging audio into the chord track with not great results, suggestions, or will there be an update? I've found it to be pretty good. So, you know, sometimes if you're doing, you know, like, you know, I've done some pretty, let's just take the jazz piece here. So, so let's say if I just add a chord track. So let's add a chord track here. So as we do this, but there are some ways to get kind of alternate suggestions. So of course I picked like an insanely long piece. All right, so, you know, as we do this, you know, this is kind of indicating that it is detected from audio. And I think that if, you know, so that, let me just do it from I think I'll just do one other piece that I think may show this feature a little better. Okay, so as we drag it over, so I think sometimes you may get like a suggestion or like, you know, alternate chords. You know, the algorithm is always going to be kind of improved, but if you have a particular file that you want to send me as like an MP3, I could kind of take a look. But this way, kind of as you're playing, you could just say, okay, so say, just change the scroll. You know, but you could just kind of, you know, if you have this set to, let me just activate the Verve piano here, that you could just try it out. But if you have a particular file, Steve, that's not working with, I've found it to work. I mean, obviously there's going to be limitations with the technology depending on how complex the piece is. But I found it to work kind of much better than I expected. But if you have a particular piece, I'd be happy to kind of send it to them, and they might be able to kind of tweak the algorithm if they have a particular piece that's not working with. Okay. All right. So we see, sorry, it's from Val Lee. I meant the display resolution. I switched monitor and it looks so terrible. So if you're on the Windows platform, if you go to Preferences and go to General, at this point you could enable high DPI, and then you could have application scaling done directly there. So again, under General on Windows, you'll see enable high DPI. You could try turning that on and off and doing different scaling resolutions. All right, so we see question, if set up for Asio, i.e. from a guitar effects processor, the Helix, is there any way to output audio to the PC speakers and not back out to the Asio device? Realize that a lot of times if you're doing that the PC speakers will probably be out of time because there's no way for the two clocks to often be set up to synchronize. So that gets to be kind of the problem. That's why often you use one Asio device at a time in situations like that. So, sometimes if you connect the PC speakers to your Helix, that's what a lot of people do, but, often it may not, could add latency and clocking and, playback out of time because there's no way for the audio interface in the Helix and your speakers to be synchronized. So, and a lot of people may just take the audio out from the Helix and connect that into the, input, whether analog or digital, of your audio interface as well, and not use it as an audio interface. So I think for a lot of situations like that, you may use it in a crutch to do a quick recording or capturing ideas. But most studio stuff, you would take the line outputs and take that into your audio interface. All right. So we see a question. Hi there. I upgraded from Cubase to Nuendo, but I don't like the way Nuendo monitors VST instruments. Is it possible to set the same as Cubase? So I think that the two are the same with VST instruments. Maybe it's just going to be some preferences that might, but I'm pretty sure they'll be identical. But check to make sure, like when you come to editing to project and mix console, sometimes if you do enable record on selected MIDI track, have that on, and that way anytime a MIDI track is selected, it will enable recording on that. So that's the one thing. And if you go to VST, usually this is more for audio, but people will put it, I usually check to make sure that these settings are the same. I usually have it in tape machine style is kind of what I recommend for a lot of people. But if I just select this track, it could automatically be enabled to record. And that first preference is editing under project and mix console. And then you could just say enable record on selected track. But the functionality between the two programs will be identical in that regards. All right, so we have Spike Williams checking in from Wales. All right, we see Michael. Great to have Michael Teams on, passing out the ice cream, and he wants people to whack the like button. All right, so I just see a question. I am unable to connect my microphone with Cubase. Can you help me? So I'm not sure if it's a USB microphone or if it is a microphone that's connected into an audio interface. If it's a USB microphone, you may have to just come to your studio setup, and at this point, under your audio system, select your USB microphone. And you'll probably see it listed on the Mac platform. On the Windows platform, you may have to install the Azio driver or maybe like a generic USB. There is a generic, generic low latency driver on Windows that you could select. And then once you have that selected, select here, and then you go to the control panel, and then you could set it to be input and output from the microphone. If the microphone is like an XLR or quarter-inch connection, that could be connected to your audio interface, and then you would just need to connect it to your audio interface and add an audio track and set the appropriate input channel. And if it's a condenser microphone on your audio interface, if it's a condenser microphone, you might have to hit the enable 48 volts or phantom power to hear the microphone. So give those suggestions a try. All right. So we see how can I delete / clear out no longer connected MIDI or audio ports? I initially used a Modi X as a controller / interface, but removed it. And some projects will bring up a warning about missing ports. So I think if you go into, let's say if we go into your audio connections for the ports, that if we just come over here, like these ports are saved in this project. So if I remove the bus, all right, and let me just save the project once those buses have been removed. So I'll just do a save as. That now when let's say I'll close this project. We go to our connections. So you might have to just resave it after removing the ports, because I think that's just kind of carried along with the particular project. All right, so we have Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset, UK. Thanks for being here. All right, so we see question, is Prologue inherent in Cubase 12 Pro? I have a project that cannot find this plugin. Thanks. So with Prologue, that's a plugin that was in earlier versions of Cubase that's not in later versions. So if you want to just load up that project in Cubase 11 and maybe just do a render in place, or render the file out at that point, or freeze the track and then open it in 12, the audio will be carried over from that particular project. So give that a try, Sable. Okay, so we have a question. Weird question, but here we go. I use a plugin with a chaos parameter that randomly adjusts the values of a bunch of parameter. This floods the plugin history with a bunch of changes. Is there any way to disable this, or do I need to render out this sound? Okay, so just seeing, so it's a chaos parameter, so. So, if it's going to be, So it floods the plugin history. So if it's randomizing like, 100 parameters and that could send out a lot of data on it. So I think if you freeze the track, that should do the trick. But if it is, I mean, it seems like Cubase is capturing, if you're randomizing or sending chaos to, it's a great term, chaos parameter. But Cubase will capture all of that. So I think it's kind of doing the right thing. So I think you might have to render it or freeze the track. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to change all your audio tracks to musical mode at once to do a tempo change? So if you wanted to do it, because you could do the events or the tracks. So if we want to select all the audio tracks, I could come here and select all the audio tracks and we could enable musical mode directly there. Another way of doing it is if you go to the pool window and you might see all of your audio tracks here. So let's say, okay, we have all of our tracks. I'm going to select the top, select the bottom. And at this point, you could enable musical mode or not on all of the tracks. Just right there, you'll see musical mode. So you could just turn it on directly there. All right, so you see from Tommy C, just asking how I'm doing and just thanking me for all I do. So I'm doing great. I'm happy to be doing our 250th live stream. We'll be doing our trivia maybe in about 22 minutes. We'll have 5 prizes to give away. Okay, my chat field jumped, but I think I'm kind of close. All right, so Michael Pierce has his soup suggestion, and we see it's very autumnal. Pumpkin seed, soften onions, add garlic, pumpkin and lentils, season, add stock, and cover and simmer till cooked. Clean pumpkin seeds and roast in a pan. Blend soup and cream fraiche and seeds. Sounds great. All right, Mike Rivera from San Antonio wants people to hit the like button. All right, so we have a question from Stanley from New York. His question is it possible to assign a different track to main master meter on the right because it's always assigned to the stereo output? So with this, it's always going to show, like this meter output here. It's going to reflect. Let me just. So like as we're playing back. So, this is kind of the master meter, so it's not really intended for particular tracks, but let's say if I wanted to. Let me just revert this. But you might be able to kind of sneak it with, if you wanted to see kind of like the meters like that, maybe with the Supervision plugin. So let's say I go to open up Supervision. And let's just set this to level meter, and I'll set it kind of vertically. right, so if I wanted to come here, I think we could maybe like sidechain input. So let's say so it's always going to be kind of mimicking the actual, you know, what's going through the master fader as opposed to a particular track. But if you just solo a track, so if we have the meter here,
First kiss, it started all of it.
so now you can just have the meter just only show kind of what's going on, but this is kind of set to be kind of what's going out of the full mix of Cubase is really kind of the intention. All right, so we have a question from Steve O. Can you just generally talk about the Supervision plugin, or maybe you have previously? If so, could you direct me to where? So I think I did a whole thing on Supervision, but we'll of course show it here. So let's go take a look. So with Supervision, it's kind of a very extensive metering plugin. So let's say if I wanted to come here, and we can have up to 9 different meters. So we have different signal meters, measurements for loudness, spectral, phase, spatial domain, waveform, and other, which could be time. So if we wanted to, let's say as we, just kind of get this in a loop so we can have some. Let me just.
That was a long time ago.
So I could have kind of like one meter here, but if I click on the, we see that we could add different meters here. So if I wanted to click and add a different meters like horizontally, I can now come over here and just say, okay, I want this to be spectral. So I want this to be like a spectrum curve or maybe a spectrum bar. And then while this is selected, if I say, okay, I want this to be a phase scope. And then while this is selected, I could just add another different element here. So say, okay, I want to see an oscilloscope. Or while we're doing this, I want to see a multi-panorama. And then this one, I have to select, we see the kind of the white outline. So if I want to add to this side here, I say, okay, let's make this a VU meter. So we could just kind of set up different modules with that. And there's one little trick you could do is now once you do this, you could also, there's a little thing where now you could have a Pong game if you wanted to inside of, so you come here. Now the secret to get Pong, if you want Pong inside of your Supervision plugin, click on the Steinberg logo 7 times. But you could just save different configurations of, so if you want to see like music editing, or there's all sorts of great presets where you could have these great different functions kind of automatically. So I want to do mastering. So as you're playing, you could just, so you could check, see what frequencies are out of phase and different phase scopes. And then each of the plugins, you could also, once we have a plugin selected, you'll have different settings. So you can say, okay, I wanted this to be an envelope, and I wanted this to maybe zoom in a bit. So I think, so you have all these different metering functions. So instead of like spending lots of money on other meters, you could just have it all kind of working inside of Supervision. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so you see Cubase Pro 12 not working on my MacBook Pro 16 OS Monterey, Studio One Pro works plug and play. So, yep, I'm running it on my MacBook Pro Monterey as well. So I don't think that's a problem, but maybe if you have a Cubase license, then it should work for you, no problem. All right, so you just see a question. Can Groove Agent drum patterns and fills be played and recorded live or real time, play along style? So certainly. So let's say we're just I'll just switch to a different project here. So if you want the Groove Agent to just, the fills pattern will just kind of automatically follow. So let's say if we're here and we have a number. So we got like our basic pattern here. So really the patterns are just going to be, just MIDI notes. So if I hit, A0, A sharp 0, that we could just trigger these. Now, if we go to our instrument here, let's go to options or go to edit. And let's say we'll select pattern that I could just come here and say autofills, like say every 4 bars or every 16 bars, just as it's playing this pattern, it'll just do a fill. So we should have our fill coming in. So you could just have it kind of automatically do different fills just randomly at your different patterns for you. So you give that a try, but you could also just very easily come right over and just trigger the particular patterns from just MIDI notes. And you could just, record those directly into the system as well. So if you wanted to come here and we'll choose Groove Agent as the MIDI input, so even as we are playing, so let's say, so you can see that's just actually recording. And at the end of 4 bars, I'll just put on autofill again. It'll say every 2 bars so you can hear it faster. And then all that data is just recorded, or if you wanted to just trigger it manually and say, okay, now I want to do an ending. So, and then just capture it. All right, wonderful to see Grant Nicholas on from Baltimore. Okay, so we see from Gabriel, hello from Spain, Greg, thanks for your videos. Is it possible to randomize the length of several notes or chords in a MIDI track? Okay, so if you wanted to, let's just take some MIDI parts here. Okay, so If you wanted to, very easily is to go to like the logical, so one of the things you could do just on the main project window, and I'll just make this larger so you could see it a little easier. But let's say if I want to take this piano part here and just go to your Midi modifiers, while you're doing this, we can say, okay, I want to randomize the length. And now, so this does it in real time, but if you wanted to now apply that and kind of, let's say, embed it into the MIDI, we could just say freeze MIDI modifiers, and then we could just come over here, and if we just wanted to take different values again, so we could just, in real time do it. If you wanted to do it as part of a logical editor, we could go to the logical editor and go to setup, and we will choose type is equal to note, and we want to take the length and set random values. And now you could just kind of set random lengths like so. So those are two different ways of doing that. See, Uno Memento is restoring an old gramophone from 1929. Sounds like a fun product. All right, we see Val Lee just saying, oh my God, Greg, thank you. Greg, I work on a laptop workstation. This tip just changed my life on the high DPI scaling minus 25%, and you can see the sun again in big projects. That's great. All right, so you just see from Tommy C. Hi, Greg. Question. I'm only trying to change the track colors, and I have been through all the preferences. So there is a color tool. So if you come right here to one, it looks like a paintbrush. So if I want to take a number of tracks here, I'm going to select all these tracks, select the paintbrush, and then just to the right of it, I could select the color. So I'm just going to come right and make sure I have no, and I'm just going to make sure that no events are selected. If you have an event selected, that will get the priority. So select the paintbrush, and we can see that the colors of all the selected tracks will change. You could also come here, manually set a single color. If you wanted to have Cubase automatically colorize tracks as they're added, go to your preferences and go to under user interface, you'll see track and mix console channels. And then you could just say, use previous track color +1 on the auto track / channel color mode. So that way, as you would load up a particular, as you add 16 tracks, they would all be different colors if you wanted to. So let me know if that helps, Tommy. All right, you see Michael Pierce is doing some tutoring, so hopefully you will see you back before. Okay, so you see Tommy's just saying, sorry, hit send. Sorry, my chat jumped on me. It says, can you tell me how to get to the color custom palette before we can make custom colors and then save them, not the individual ones, but the big one that allows you to and then it says cust. So probably what it is if you go to project colors setup, and then you'll see the color here. You could at this point just double click, and then you could kind of go through the color wheel and be able to kind of pick your colors accordingly. So let me know if that's what you're looking for, Nick. Okay, so we have from the Heartbreak Time Machine question. Can I split a single MIDI track into multiple MIDI tracks by note, i.e. all the C's go to one track, the D sharps go to another, etc.? So yeah, we could do that. So let's say if I have a pattern here, or just, so we could do it with drums or just like piano parts here. So all you have to do is say, go to MIDI and then choose dissolve part. And you can say separate pitches, hit process. And if it's going to, and then each pitch will automatically be split out and carry the name of the pitch will be included over. So once again, select the event, come to MIDI and choose to dissolve part, and then select separate pitches. All right, we see Paul Clare just says it would be great if Steinberg would create a MIDI control app for Android. I just started using Avid and it's really useful but awkward. So we had one for early on. We had a Cubase IC Pro for Android, but there's a lot of, it was a bit of a fragmented operating system at that point. So it was between all the different devices. And so, but I'll mention that. All right, so we have a question. Can you tell us about Cubase future ideas? Are they moving towards film scoring or are they moving towards production side? So I can't really comment on, I don't know what's in the next version of Cubase. They usually don't tell me because I talk to 10,000 people a week. So I'm not the person to that where I get like inside information all the time with that. But I know that it's always kind of a priority that, they want to have a series of features for new features will always be added for different, it's not all film scoring features, it's not all notation features, it's not all like working with bands, recording and editing bands or doing hip hop EDM, so they will always have new features that are kind of a balance for different types of uses. So, and that's one of the things that's great about Cubase. So all right. Hi, Greg. Can you show us how to use the mouse wheel as a jog wheel to move the timeline? Let's say if we have a project here. All right. And so if you press down on the mouse, like, on the mouse scroll wheel button and press down here, you could just kind of move and navigate kind of the project window like this. So let's say if I'm here, press down, and then you could just navigate accordingly. So press the mouse scroll wheel down. Most mouse buttons have that function, and then you could navigate like that. So let me know if that's what you want to do. I'll just reread it. Or if you want to use it as a jog wheel. So if you want to use it more as a jog wheel, let's say I'm here, and I'll just switch this to bars and beats. And now at this point, We can move the jog wheel, and let's say if you wanted to scrub, I'll come here, and let's say if we put this into scrub mode, so if you wanted to jog like that, or just go onto the timeline using your mouse wheel, or just pressing and holding down the mouse button and moving accordingly. So let me know if those help. All right. It says the problem I have with that metering is that it's just too slow. Metric halo spectral foo is lightning fast. So we haven't had any complaints with the speed of the metering, and some of the meters themselves will have different speeds on it, but if it's dealing with supervision. So. All right, so we have Jazzy Lamel just saying, hey, Greg, do you do mastering out of Cubase or Wavelab? And can you answer questions on Wavelab? So, yeah, I use Wavelab as well all the time. So if you have Wavelab questions, we could definitely do those. All right, so we see question, sometimes I want volume automation, so I automate the fader, although now the fader is locked, which can be really annoying when mixing. Is there a key combination to change the fader with automation? Okay, let me see if let me just reread that again. Okay, so it says sometimes I want the volume automation, so I automate the fader. Okay. Although now the fader is locked, which can be really annoying while mixing. Is there any key combination to change the fader with automation? So let's say, okay, so let's say if we have, I think if we do maybe a trim automation mode, so let's say, all right, so let's say I'm just going to take this track here, and let's say I have automation going on, so I'm going to automate some parameters here. All right, so say I leave it roughly at the same level, and then I'm gonna, okay, so let's say I put it into trim automation, so I'm gonna open up the automation panel. All right, and now, like, if I wanted to take the automation as I move it up, that we could see the original automation and then what the trim has done to that. So let me know if setting the trim, so that will kind of keep the same. So if I just wanted to come here. So, and another way to do this also is just to take this track, and you could assign a Vca fader to it. This is why people would often use VCAs. So now if I have this automation, I'll take out a trim, and I grab my Vca fader. And let me just add the Vca fader to the track. That'd be helpful. So now if I automate the Vca fader, that this track, we can still maintain the automation, but the changes would be just, we see the VCA's result here. And if at this point we wanted to combine the automation of the VCA and the link channels, we can now just take the channels automation and combine it with the result of the Vca fader. So let me know if that's helpful and kind of what you're looking for. All right. So it sees. So we see a question from Ontario, Canada. You have supervision and control room. Is there a key command you can use to enable, disable, so you can see it for short periods of time? So let me just see if I could come over. So if you want to do it from like a keyboard, we could come over to our MIDI remote, and let me just see if we could. I'm going to just check what, so it's an insert one. Let's come over to our MIDI remote. And let's see if we could assign it here. A lot of times you could do it just directly from, let's see if let's see if it's in the key command. So what I usually do is when I want it to, if I have this set up, let's say I have that, is I just have it set up as, I add it as a workspace. So at this point, like while I'm playing, we could add the workspace, and I could just say, okay, I just want to go to Supervision. Let's see if it's, so we could just open up our Supervision directly there from a keyboard. So at this point, we could just say, okay, I just wanted to go to my big mixer view. Now I wanted to go here to double supervision. And I think just the key command for that is Alt or Option plus the number 1 on the computer keyboard. And then you could just have that open directly there. So try setting up as a workspace. All right, let's do one more question, and then we will do our little trivia contest. So we see from the Heartbreak Time Ridge says, oh my God, dissolve parts, separate pitches. Yes. All right, that's great. All right, so we see how to configure Roland JDXI, please. So the Roland is just a keyboard. So, you know, a lot of external keyboards don't have the ability to, you know, work as nicely and as elegantly as virtual instruments. So there's a couple of different approaches. We could take this, you know, connected. I'm sure it has a USB port that would transmit MIDI. Sometimes they transmit MIDI and audio. You probably wanted to only do MIDI if you have an audio interface. And at this point, you want to add a MIDI track. So, and we'll see our MIDI input and output port. So you want to set the channel where you have the sound loaded and set the output port. So let's say I have this connected to my UR24C interface. So now when I play, MIDI data will be captured in via the USB port and probably under all MIDI inputs. And at that point, we could, you know, the MIDI would then go out to the JDXI, and that would generate the particular sounds. All right, now many people want to take the audio out and integrate it in with their DAW, or integrate it in with Cubase. And what you have to do is, you know, for those of us who have done MIDI for a long time, we would always send the audio outs to like a big mixer. Like I have 64 channels of mixer channels in my studio for all my external MIDI. But most of the people want to be able to run that into a DAW so we could have access to the same effects. So if you have Cubase Pro, we could go to external instruments. And because the MIDI is going out to the JDXI is generating the sound, and that's why they're in the early days called tone generators, because that generates the sound. And what we could do is add an external instrument. So let's say here I have like a montage, and you need to have available inputs on your audio interface. Define those inputs on your audio interface, and then what you need to do is right click. You want to add an instrument track, and then you'll see under external plugins, you could have it like your JDXI instead of a montage, and hit add track. And now you could have the audio connected from, so the MIDI is going out to the JDXI, and then the audio is coming from the JDXI back into the audio interface. And now we could have access to all of your plugins and effects in the software domain. All right, so let's go ahead and do our trivia. I'm going to go to a different view so I could keep up. And I realize that we'll try to keep this simple. I have a number of trivia questions. So we'll do trivia questions based on the live stream. So what we'll do, we'll kind of keep this simple. I don't want to have like really complicated contest rules, but if you're the first person to answer particular questions, and I'm just going to change my view here to different view so I can kind of keep up with the real-time chat. Bear with me just for a moment. Okay, so this will be live Club Cubase live stream trivia. So if you win, and some of these will be involving people that are on the live stream. So if the question involves you, please don't answer the question, or we won't grant you that as a winner. So we'll have 5 different prizes. And you can email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. And let me know what software titles you have. You know, we're thinking, oh, we could do, you know, like a Cubase 12 update. But if you have a Cubase 12 update, or you have the latest version of spectral layers, or if you wanted something, you know, we didn't want to give you something that you already had. So email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, and we'll figure out something as a prize for you that makes sense for what software you already have. Because we realize that a lot of people have software, lots of software titles from Steinberg already. So we'll just do this, and I have a number of trivia questions, but we'll start with 5 different trivia questions. We have 5 prizes. If you want to do more trivia, we could do that as well, just for fun. Okay. All right, so it's not just, it's, you know, I see someone saying that they're terrible on trivia questions, so it's not Jeopardy. So it's just kind of based on comments from live stream, and people have been on the live stream. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at my questions. All right. Okay, so the first question is, what is the name of Mark Rabin's dog? So if Mark Rabin is watching, we won't necessarily let you win because you know the name of your dog. But for those that have watched, this has been in the discussion. What is the name of attendee Mark Rabin's dog? Okay, let me jump back. Nick says Stella. Stella is the right answer. So, Nick, please email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so I'm going to make a little note here in my notes. Bear with me just a second. Okay, for prize number 2, what is attendee Jeff Zabelski's primary instrument? So Jeff Zabelski's primary instrument. And Jeff is in Chico, California. Sable Winters, I believe, is the first with oboe. That is correct. Ooh, just beat Michael Teams. All right. All right. So I'm going to write Sable's name down as the winner. All right. Question number 3. Which attendee has performed with Guns N' Roses, Poison, Cinderella, and Night Ranger? So once again, which attendee has it performed with Guns N' Roses, Poison, Cinderella, and Night Ranger? We see Pablo. I don't think that's correct. We see Stella. I don't think it's Mark Rabin's dog, but maybe, you know. Okay, so once again, and if we don't have this, I have more questions. Which attendee is performed with Guns N' Roses, Poison, Cinderella, and Night Ranger? See, Michael Teams is having brain lock. All right, so I'll go ahead and move on to the next question. The answer is Fred Corey. All right. So let's go to the next question. This one is probably admittedly hard. I don't know if anyone would remember this, but I mentioned it once. What recording or artist recording was Greg recently thanked on? So what artist or recording was Greg recently thanked on? See, Michael Teams was correct that Fred Corey did do Amos Moses. This is probably hard. I only mentioned it once in a live stream. See, Hans Zimmer. No, I may have been, but I don't. Stevie Wonder, a long time ago, but see, Hot Mess. That's an answer, but not the artist that I was thinking of. But it wasn't Paul McCartney's latest album. I think I did get a thanks on one. All right, so let's see. I'll give it another 10 or more seconds. See, Peter's like, I remember you mentioning it, though. It wasn't Zed. Yeah, Peter's saying a couple weeks ago, I think. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on. Let's see, I'll just wait in our 10 seconds. But the artist was Jeff Berlin and his wonderful Jack Songs album. So if you have a chance to listen to that, I think it's on Bandcamp now. Check it out. It's a wonderful album. Wonderful bass player, and he inspired me to study music. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, so this is a question. What is the name of this recording studio where Michael Pierce works? So again, what is the recording studio, name of the recording studio where Michael Pierce works? And I just see comment from Valley about Buckethead with the question mark. And I think Buckethead did play on the Jeff Berlin record. So, all right. So we have Steve Allen with the correct answer for Grand Chapel Studios, where Michael Pierce works. All right. Congratulations, Steve. Okay, this is a hard one. I don't think I've ever called it out, but sometimes I will bring attention to the person. What attendee is often on a live stream that is a member of the group Maroon 5? So what attendee is often on the live stream is a member of the group Maroon 5? This is a really hard one. I never said what group he was in, but I always thank him and tell people to do a Google search of him often. We see people speculating that Jazz Dude is in. It's not Adam Levine. Not James Valentine. All right, we see Michael Teams with the correct answer of Jesse Carmichael. All right, congratulations, Michael. All right. All right, so here's another question. And I realize that there are two correct answers for this. Which live stream attendee has worked with Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Timbaland, and Justin Timberlake? So once again, which live stream attendee has worked with Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Timbaland, and Justin Timberlake? Don't see any correct answers so far, and there's usually about a 20 seconds delay. It's not Kerwin to my knowledge, but if it is, maybe Kerwin could let me know. All right. It's not Mary Poppins. All right. See, Peter just saying, didn't he join us on a Zoom meeting several months ago? He was actually, yes, he did join us on a Zoom meetup. Actually, both of them have been on Zoom meetups. All right, so we have Jean-Marie Horvat. So Jazz Dude is the winner. Another answer is Daryl Pearson. So Jean-Marie Horvat. Congratulations, Jazz Dude. All right. Let me just notate this. All right, so that's our 5 questions. Let me just count and make sure that that's our 5. So we had Nick, Sable, Steve Allen, Michael Teams and Jazz Dude as winners. Do you guys want to hear any other trivia questions? I have a couple of other trivia questions if people want to try to answer them. You see, Benny is saying that was fun. Let's do just some trivia just for fun, if that's okay. All right. All right, so let's come over and we'll jump back into our questions in just a minute. Let's do, I think I have a couple of other quick questions. This is one that Michael Teams cannot answer. Where does Michael Teams get the inspiration for his ice cream flavors? So where does Michael Teams get the inspiration for his ice cream flavors? You see, from his cows, from Texas, Sherlock Holmes, LSD, and he may have just mentioned this publicly on a Zoom meetup, but I think I did mention it on a live stream. You see Ben and Jerry's. You see Nick saying, man, I just thought he was an ice cream genius. You see Top Gun, random thinking from his garden. We'll give it another 10 seconds. Okay, we'll give it 5 more seconds, and then we'll move on to another question. Okay. What Michael had shared was that he gets them from a local ice cream shop near his home. Okay, let's see. I think I have some more. What town in Spain does the famous hot mess drummer Pablo live in? So what town does Pablo, the famous drummer of Hot Mess, does he live in? Right. See, it's not Portugal. It's not Barcelona or Malaga. All right. John Costigan has it right with Galicia. Congratulations, John. All right. Let's see if I have another question or two. All right. Here's an interesting one. What does Gareth often feed his daughter Layla for dinner on Friday night live streams? What type of food does Gareth often feed his daughter Layla on Friday night live streams? All right, Soren has this one correct. So good bragging rights for Soren. Pizza is the correct answer. All right, let's see if I have one last one, and then we'll jump back in. What MIDI controller keyboard does Greg use on his live stream system? What MIDI keyboard controller does Greg use on his live stream system? See if anyone remembers this. All right. We have a correct answer from Erdi Moorcock, a P4, a Nectar P4. That's correct. And I also see Benny's mentioning a Korg Nano control. That could also be correct. A Panorama P4. See Graham. All right. All right. So for those people that won, again, it's going to be we have Nick Sable, Steve Allen, Jazz Dude, and Michael Teams. Email me and let me know if there's like you need an update, something like that, what you have, and we'll try to find something to give you. We don't want to, again, give something that's you already own, or if you want something you already own, we could do that too. But just email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. The person that I would be getting the licenses from is going to be on vacation next week. I think it's kind of like the fall break in Germany. So lots of people are on vacation. So it might be the week after next. But please email me. And, thanks again for, being a part of the 250 live streams. I really enjoy spending my afternoons with all of you, and I really appreciate all the work that Jazz Dude and Agent K does in moderation. And I always feel like I have a co-pilot in Jazz Dude helping respond to questions quickly. And I just really appreciate that. And I also so appreciate the work that Jan has done with the Cubase Index, and I think that's just made all the live streams just a really so much better that people could research and search for topics. So I really appreciate everyone's work in making it such a wonderful community, and I feel very fortunate to be a part of it. So let's go ahead and jump back to questions. All right. And let me know if the trivia quiz was fun or if it was silly to do. All right. Hopefully that was fun. Okay. So let me just go continue. See, Patrick Emmanuel A says Cubase is the best investments he's made. That's great. All right. So we see. All right. I have to jump way back. Sorry. All right, so I may have lost some information on the chat. So I just saw what is the best controller for Cubase from an Android app. So I think is TouchOSC available for Android. So a lot of people will use that. I think there are some like Mackie control apps. And I think maybe the Avid dock might be on Android that someone had mentioned. So check some of those out. All right. Sorry, I just lost some questions. Let me see if I could go and start catching up. I'm just seeing now we had so many answers on the chat. And if you had some questions that I didn't get to, please feel free to ask them again in the chat. Sorry about that. Just had a ton of questions come in, and I lost some in the chat, so I apologize. Okay, so we just see from Bomars says, I got 64 gigabytes of RAM on my new MacBook Pro M1 Max. No matter what buffer size, my Azio guard sits right below medium in performance meter. I'm just curious to know what affects it in general. So I have this, I think the same model Mac that you do. So let's come over to the audio system. And okay, so I think it's with the Azio guard. So let me just open up a project here. I'll open up kind of one that's a little bigger. Okay, so all right, so when we look at our performance meter, so just kind of come over here. All right, so we'll have kind of our Azio guard. So it could be dependent, you know, so these are, when we see the Azio guard meter here, what this is indicating, you know, there used to be kind of, you know, like 1 meter for kind of real time in Azio guard, but certain tracks, like if they are in record, we can notice that the Azio guard meter can sometimes start to shoot up because these tracks that we're doing Azio guard on may have to run at a lower CPU, you know, run at a lower buffer size. So when, you know, what Azio guard does is it actually determines, you know, like if we have my latency set here for 512, what it could do is just simply raise the tracks that aren't necessarily being recorded. So it could be that maybe you have a lot of tracks selected or that are record enabled, and that could cause the Azio guard to be higher. But that's just kind of like the real time performance, indicating how much of that is being used. So, you know, don't worry about it so much. That will tend to be higher if you have more tracks that are actively in record or selected, where you may have to kind of, you know, pre-buffer some of the data to operate at lower latencies on that particular track. All right. I'm in the whole quiz section, so let me... All right, so we have Hijack Sonar checking in from India. I see Spike Williams saying Galicia is not a town. I don't know, not sure if it's a city or a village, but sorry for my ignorance there in northern Spain geography. See, Michael Teams has also mentioned I had a Choice OS controller as well. All right, so we have a question. Sorry, it just jumped on me. Okay, so we see question. Hello, I'm new to Cubase. I would like to know if it's possible to drag and drop an audio clip from the grid to the file browser in order to save it on my personal sample folder. So I'm not sure if we could drag it from, you know, but I think, I mean, you could, instead of, let's see if I, me see if I have just a quick loop. But let's say if I just copy, let me just open up file folder. So it looks like that just dragged it out. Here. So it's not the WAV file, but what you could do, if you wanted to export, so if you have any of the samples that are here, because generally Cubase wants to, if the file is in the project, what the it wants to kind of make sure it knows where the file is. So instead of dragging it out, and if people would open up the project and then it's not there. But what you could do is, if you come to export selected events, and then you could choose the file path, and you could choose your sample folder here, and then all the audio would be just exported directly out to your file path, and you could include different processing options as well. So, maybe try doing that, because if we drag it out of here and Cubase is still referencing it, but I think, let's see if we could even just copy and paste. So let's say if I just select this, copy the file, yeah, I don't think that works, because generally, it's probably a higher priority to make sure that the files that you're actually using for the project stay within the project. So, but try, just doing, the export selected events, and then you could just leave your sample folder loaded there. Okay, so we see Fet and Sable liked the trivia, so maybe we could do a trivia question every live stream to start off. See, Nick is saying he's so glad he always says hi to Stella. Can't believe it won him a prize. So, and Jazz Dude saying we are a good team. Yeah. Okay, so we see Jackshot Records is indicating he uses Touch OSC on Android. All right, so we see from Pedro just saying, any chances to have automation kept while using mixer snapshots? Because the one thing that's tricky about it, and it gets to be kind of a rabbit hole, because the automation includes, the level at the fader. So if the level at the fader is changing, at that point, it could be very complicated. And then other automation that's kind of tied to routing or to VCAs, that could also be tricky, maybe in the future, but it's a pretty involved thing. But, I'll make sure to mention it again. But we'll have to, but I wouldn't anticipate it immediately. So. All right, so we just have a question. What's the best way to import and organize multiple takes of drums from Pro Tools into Cubase for comping and then warping? So what I would do, let's jump to a project here. Let's go to this one. Okay, so if I'm, let's say, I'll just, sorry, I have wrong keyboard active from the trivia game. All right. All right. So I'm going to just come here. All right. So let me just duplicate this track. Okay. So what so sometimes people will put them into folders. So if you have kind of multiple tracks here, so sometimes what I've seen people that have kind of multiple, let me just, I'll just kind of start from scratch here. See if we could. All right, so say these are drums, and I'm just going to go ahead and record. We just select all. Okay, so what I may do if I was recording or importing files, I may work with track versions and within folder tracks. So I'm going to just come here and add these to, add the selected tracks to a new folder. Okay. And then let's say I'm going to have all these tracks selected. I'm going to do a new version, and I could just at this point import files to different track versions. So let's say, okay, we're recording, and let's say I'm recording or I'm taking, just dragging the audio files over. Okay, and I will come here. Let's say we're going to have take 3. And you could label these versions appropriately. So now if I wanted to go to take 2 to take 1, we could just come right over here and be able to change between the different takes. And even if we wanted to, at particular points, switch to take 2, take 3. So that's how I would probably do the file management, is maybe just kind of coming over here and switching between our different versions. So let's say at this point, we'll select, and I could say, this one I want it take 1 on a kick, but I want it to take 3 on the hi-hat. If you were wanting to mix and match different ones. Also, if we come to our track versions and let's say we want to, let's create a new empty version. And at this point, I could just say, okay, from this all right, so I'm just going to hold down the shift key. So let's say at this point, I wanted to start with version 3. And let's say I'm just going to select with the range tool here. Let's say version 4. And let's say we split. And then at this point, I could go to, like, we'll say this is almost like our comp. I want to take all of version 4, and then let's say copy. And then I could come over to, let's say, our final one here. Let me just select all of these. Okay, so we go to version 4, and I have a hole there. So we could just kind of paste. Switch to version 1, and let's come over. Take these, copy, Control, Command C, and jump back to version 4. And we could have kind of our different takes. Now, once we have all of those done in the folder, we could just, activate a line for the phase editing. So at this point, I'll just jump back to my files here. So if I wanted to do more warping, on the particular track, let me just, at this point, if we have our phase accurate warping, I could just go to the warp tool and we could go to free warp, and this would apply to all the tracks. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so that we could just drop in. And then you could do your warping here or do your kind of group quantizing. So. All right. All right, so we see Nick just saying, having one, I have no clue what I would like as a prize since I have Cubase 12 Pro. Think of an instrument set or a plugin, and we'll see what we could do for you. Yeah, just email. So Alexander Plasko is saying, where would we be without VST? So lots of big analog mixers trying to get synthesizers to actually chase events well. All right. All right, so we see just a question. What is the little crisscross line on a track with strings? Let me just see if I could. Let's see if it's this project. So let me know if this was the project. Sorry if I missed this from Solid Gold Entertainment. All right, Jeff Granum just says, for those of Cubase IC Pro is not working when it prompts for a password and settings unchecked, the password if checked, and it will work just fine. Hope that helps. Thanks for the tip. All right, and we have Bart van Mulebroek from Belgium joining. Thanks. All right, so we see a question. What does Vox stands for in a vocal track? So it's often just like an abbreviation, like you may say kick, instead of kick drum or bass drum, or or GTR as opposed to guitar. So it's usually like a quick shortcut for vocal track or voice, and it's Latin for voice, as Jazz Dude mentioned. All right, so we have a question. Can you explain a bit about saturation? So saturation, if we wanted to take a particular track, so often when dealing with analog recording, we would have the nature of the recording. If you recorded a little hot, but the deficiencies of the medium, people became used to the sound. So when you kind of pushed analog tape a little bit, it gave you kind of a certain particular tone. Technically it's distortion and but it's often kind of deemed saturation if it's not so high a level of distortion. So when working with the saturation, we could think of it as kind of a low level distortion. It's kind of mimicking what was imposed and introduced by the deficiencies of the analog recording medium. And once you have something and people are used to it for a long time, then people want to kind of have those sounds that they're used to hearing in their head applied, in a different medium such as digital. So if we want to come here, let's say we'll take this project here, and I'll put some saturation on it so you could hear. So I'll just put it here. We'll say Magneto. So if you're hearing a vocal, so we'll just listen to the voice here.
Dark, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here?
And then, so just kind of adding that little bit of grit can sometimes make some tracks kind of stand out. And let's listen to it kind of like this is on the overall mix. And I'll even kind of put a little more on. So now this is extreme. So often people use it as kind of like a technique to kind of glue sounds together. So that gives you some idea what saturation will do. So it's kind of introducing kind of the a limitation, some of the characteristics of analog recording. All right, so I see Sable just asking, what can we request to win? What limitations? So just go ahead and let me know if there's any particular software tools you're looking for in the Steinberg catalog, Sable, and I'll see if I could go to bat for you. So, but just see what you need. I think you have Cubase 12, so I don't want to give you a Cubase 12 update, but maybe something like around that price point. But just let us know what you need, and like I see that you don't have. I know that you need maybe that you've been looking for your Hallian to have a to have the Mellotron sound. So that might be a good choice. So, all right. So John Koskian just saying the Hangouts saved our sanity when we couldn't work. So I'm glad that it's been helpful for people. NC Sable is just saying thank you, Greg, for getting us through the pandemic. So I couldn't travel, so I'm glad that I could help people. So. You see John Costing keeps asking for submarines. Probably go to Russia, maybe. All right. Yeah, we see a great comment from, sorry, just jumped on me. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. Sorry if you missed the trivia quiz we just had a little while ago. All right. All right, so we see Spike Williams just mentioning is about the Vox. It says in the old days, engineers would slick tape across the mixing desk to label tracks they wouldn't have, so they would have to use abbreviations. So that's where Vox kind of comes from. All right, so we see from Bomars, thank you so much, Greg. Very curious to see the meter if you press play since you're using the same machine. Also, is it normal to get disc cache spikes when playing and stopping playback? So at the very beginning, like, if all of a sudden you have to, access, like a lot of samples. So let's say if I open up my meter. So sometimes you may get, I have some virtual instruments, but it's not a super heavy project, but you may see, and that's kind of as it's buffering, you may just see the disk cache spike, so as you're really getting kind of close to like the maximum CPU power, you'll kind of feel it in the program. Like it'll start to be a little sluggish and stuff like that as it's working harder. So, you could leave the performance meter up all the time, but probably in your machine, you're probably fine not to worry about it so much. But it's common to sometimes, when it's, playing audio initially that's buffered, some of the audio. So you may see it just kind of release the buffer, and then you may see the disk caches kind of spike really quick at the beginning and end of playing, depending on how big the project is. All right, so we have a question from Jazzy Lamel. Just says, question about Wavelab. I'm doing a 5-song EP for a client, and I guess have them all set up in a montage, and I want to be able to do separate audio clips with the track name in it. Can you explain? All right, so what I do with Wavelab, let's say, if I was doing, so let's just go to open it up. I'm just glad to see that everyone enjoyed the trivia quiz. So, all right, so I'll just come here I'll just do new project. I'll just start with a montage here. Okay, so I'm going to insert audio files. All right, so say I have 6 songs. Okay, so at this point, I want to put them all onto tracks. Okay, and I'll just line it on to one track at this point. So say I have all my songs here, and then I'm going to go, once we're starting from a montage, I can go to the CD, and let's go to our functions and go to CD Wizard. So at this point, I'm going to say just hit apply. And now it's kind of placed all of the different files here. So if we wanted to name the files, we could just come and hit enter. So we can see the names right here in the CD window. So the CD tab. So we could just kind of see that. And at this point, if I actually need to do editing from this, like, what you could also do is at this point, if you just go to the edit from the montage, you could just go to edit source, and then any change that you make here. So say if I just cut this out, then if you go to the montage, you can see that that change has automatically been reflected there. So let me know if that helps, if that makes sense for your needs. See, Graham Witcher wants everyone to get to 150 likes. All right. All right, so we have Ali just stopping by to say hi. All right, so we have a question. All right, let me just... is there a way to move the selection when I click over an event? I managed to activate the locator to move when hitting empty space. All right, so we see, is there a way to move, I guess maybe the locators when I click over an event? Okay, I'm just rereading this one more time. Is there a way to move the location when I click over an event? I managed to activate the locator to move when hitting empty space. So let's say if I have maybe a marker, let me just add some marker tracks in here. Okay, is there a way to move the location? So when I click over an event, I managed to activate the locator to move when hitting empty space. So I'm not sure if you want it to move like a locator to that particular event. So let's say if I'm here and my cursor is there, that the marker, if it's selected, so let's say I have this marker selected and I want it to be at the spot. I think I could go to move to cursor. And then the locator is moved immediately to where the cursor was. But let me know. I'm afraid I may have misunderstood the question. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to select the track automatically when I hit an event on it? So when I come, there's a preference. So let's say if I go to the preference here, we will go to editing. And I think if we go to project and mix console, there's, let's see if it's in here. Or see if it's just in editing. Okay, so there's track selection follows event selection. So now if I click on an event here, the track is selected. I click on an event here, the track is selected there. So again, come to preferences, to editing, to track selection follows event selection. Okay. And I also see kind of part two of this question. Is there a way in the mix console, select the track if I open a plugin on it? So let me see. I'll see if that preference is applied. I'm not sure if that's going to apply to. All right, so say if I have, I don't know of a way to select that, this would select the particular tracks. I don't know a way of doing that. I'll just search for a preference just in case. Okay, so there is a there's a synchronized plugin program selection to track selection. But it doesn't seem, I don't know of a way of doing that, but if maybe you play with that preference and see if that makes a difference. All right. So we see from Keith Young. Hello, Greg. I'm having problems identifying the part I want to correct in spectral layers. Any tips? I'm sure I've missed something. Simply, thanks. Okay, so let's take a look. So, one of the things that you could do with spectral layers, so let's say if we want to do like spectral editing, I'll just come here. Let's add it on the track. So now when I double click, just do it under this project here real quick. Okay, so if you're in spectral layers, once you have kind of a selection, so if you're looking for, make sure I have this right, identifying the part I want to correct. So now that I have this selection done, I could just play, and it's only going to play that selected area. So I say, okay, I just want to do this. So it basically bypasses everything except the selected range. So this way you could just really isolate different elements. So if you only want to hear these frequencies going on, and say, okay, I just want to hear these frequencies. So that way you could kind of find the particular frequencies pretty easily to do that. So try just auditioning and just playing with the selection and see if that helps you isolate so you could find the particular areas that you want to do spectral editing on. All right, so we have a question from Robert Moyle. It says, thanks for all your help. Can you assign a key command to the scroll bar in the mix window? All right. So I think it's just, let's say if we're in our mixer window, that if I have that channel selected, that you could use the, just use the left-right arrows on your computer keyboard, and you could just simply select and move like that. So let me know if that's helpful. So that will select the channels. But just the left-right arrows in the mix console. See, Gareth just bummed that he missed a trivia quiz. We'll try to maybe add a trivia. Let me know if people want just a trivia question for every live stream. Maybe we could do that. So sorry that you missed it, Gareth. Your daughter's dinner choice for Friday nights was one of the questions. So, but we're glad that you're here at least. So. See, Gareth is making dinner for the recipe or for his lady. All right. Okay, so we see from Lawrence Koch about to do a clean install Cubase and Windows, looking for the best way to load sample libraries away from their default location. So what you could use, Lawrence, is the Steinberg Library Manager. So it's installed with Cubase. And just simply come to the settings wheel here, and then you could choose the library default location. So choose that to a secondary drive or whatever drive you want to save it on. And then all your content as it's installed will just kind of go directly to that particular location. All right, so you see a question. Greg, how many DAWs have you used till now? What makes Cubase better? So I guess it wasn't a DAW at the time, but my first sequencer program was on Atari. It was a Hybrid Arts Edit Track Gold, which was like SMPTE Track Gold without the SMPTE sync box. So I used Hybrid Arts, and then probably it's almost... might be, just about probably 31 years ago. I snuck up to, I skipped a day of college, and my buddy Wayne and I, we went up to the AES show, and Michael Finlayson was kind enough to let us crash at his house in New York, like Peekskill area. And we, took the train into the city, and I went to the AES show and I saw Cubase, and I haven't had to run any other programs since then. So I've been running Cubase about 31 years or so. All right. All right. So see, Jose's just rephrased this question. Is there a way to move the locator, the vertical line, to the exact location when you click the mouse while clicking on an event? All right. So if you want to just move directly to a particular event, I think it's is it Alt Shift will take you directly. So if you hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, at that point, wherever you click, so say if I click here, then that will take me, and this could also be, if you go to transport, you could also just, if you wanted to always be at the beginning of the selection, like some people like that, we could go to transport and just select use video files edit mode. Then when you select an event, the cursor goes directly to the beginning of the event. But if you don't want that, and if you wanted to always have the playhead go exactly where you want, just click, just turn snap off. But you could just click right here while holding down Alt plus Shift, or Alt or Option plus the letter plus Shift, and clicking wherever you want. And then the cursor will go directly there. So let me know if I understood better. Okay, so we see from Jazzy Lamel, hi Greg, what I want to do is export the EP songs out separately as WAV audio files with the track names and metadata embedded to it. So once this is in WaveLab, but once you've done the edits in the montage, those WAV files are automatically just done. So let's say if I just wanted to go to here. So, if we have the metadata, I think we could just come here to, say, render. And you could do a whole montage, or all tracks, all CD tracks and group all marked regions, all selected tracks. And then just hit start. So we could just say render all selected tracks to this location. And, that would, so once you do that, so again, just click on the render button. And for the source, you could just do the whole montage, and that would be like an audio file of like the entire montage, or you'd select all the tracks and just simply export that. All right, so we have a question. Okay, so Best Screen Jesus says, I just want my Groove Agent to work by slicing samples and not randomly crashing when I adjust or make changes to the mixer. So I don't think I ran into that, but let me just... just revert this and see if I could get it to recreate what you want. And Best Screen Jesus, if you want to send me a video, I could pass it along and see if it's misbehaving. But let's say, right, I'll open this. Yeah, I think we may have done this once before, but okay, so let me just. All right, let's get to the mix console here. All right, so it's out. Come over here to the amp and let's add some. Let's adjust parameters. Let's add EQ. Oh, I just got it to crash. So, I'll bring that to their attention. Thanks for letting me know of that. Sorry running into that, but I'll pass it on to the team. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to batch export all the events independently of their location with their exact duration? So an easy way of doing this is if you select the events, come over here to File and go to Export, and then just export selected events. And then at this point, you could choose for these to be block events, one event, or separate events. And you could choose different locations, and that will maintain the same signal unless you specifically add a tail. But you could do it dry with channel settings, with sends, or with the master effects processing applied to it if you want as well. So let me know if that helps. All right, you see Uno Momento is waking up early tomorrow for recording. He's going to take off. Thanks for joining us for 250th. All right, live stream. All right, I think my son is home from school. He's happy to be. See, Capital Razor also started in Hybrid Arts. I thought it was really bad at software. And then I got Cubase, and it made total sense to me. So, all right. So Jose was just saying. So Playhead is the name he was struggling with. Thank you. So yeah. See, Spike Williams started with his first DAW was Saw Plus. So. All right, so we see a question. Is there a Cubase independent version of Supervision in existence? I think the only way that you could access it is within Cubase. So it's kind of tied directly to that. All right, so a question. Greg, does Cubase only scan VST3 when the VST3 is on default location? Example, common file VST. So yeah, VST3 plugins are generally always going to be in the same location so that we don't run into all the problems of adding VST2 plugin folders and companies installing it into different locations. So I don't think it's going to be scanned if it's not in the particular folder. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to lock faders in the mix console? So if you have the mix console, one of the things you could do that a lot of people miss often is, like, let's say we have our fader here. If it gets moved, let's say you're just doing this and you're like, oh, why isn't it sounding the way I want? And you realize that you're moving the wrong fader. We've all done it. You could always come here and we have Option or Alt plus Z is kind of unlimited levels of undo and redo in the mix console. If the track is automated, so let's say I'm here and I now automate that particular track, that now regardless of where it is, it will kind of just snap back to its automated point as well. So that will be locked. But if you inadvertently move the fader, just come here, hit Alt or Option plus Z. And if you come, you could just say, okay, we do this. And this works for other parameters as well. So, and if we're in the full screen mixer, you could actually see the edit history where everything's going to be labeled as well. But if it's set to automate, then you're good to go. So Gareth is saying if Spectral Layers isn't separate, you would recommend Steinberg to sell it as a separate product. Yeah, it's always kind of it's always a tricky balance of offering something unique to Cubase as well. So, but I'll mention that as an idea. I think sometimes having a value gives it more value. Okay. See Jose Antonio just saying, thanks, Greg, and sorry for all my questions today. Can I keep asking? So we go until like 4 o'clock. So like another 25 minutes or so. So ask away. All right, so we have from 2R Studios. Hi, Greg. Congrats on your 250 stream. Thank you, and thanks for being on it. Are there any plans to add QCon Pro to MIDI Remote? Thanks in advance. And most of those are designed to work, straight with Mackie control protocol. And, it's the plugin, the actual hardware developers are doing, like the ones we have here for the Nano Control and the Kai and some of the Arturia ones. It's actually the the hardware companies are doing the remote control scripts. There's an API for it. So a lot of times, the companies don't send out every controller that they make to us for us to work on. So But the intention is that when you get, that the hardware companies will make their own remote control scripts. So we'll see that coming more. All right. Hi, Greg. A question. I made some device panels which work when I turn the knobs with the mouse, but when I assign them to the new MIDI remote features, they don't respond even though they appear to be assigned. So I think, when I've worked with this in the past, that if you assign them via a quick control, so that you could then control them using the quick controls. So give that a try. So we just see a comment from Paul Nielsen, 4 hours of live stream. Great effort, Greg. Yeah, if I go beyond 4 hours, then when people are doing closed captioning for different countries or different languages, rather, then it doesn't do closed captioning past 4 hours. So, all right, I know we had a couple questions sent in. So let's get to some of those. I'm glad that everyone enjoyed the trivia quiz. Okay. So Harry had sent a comment that, we had a question about sidechaining signal. I think it was from Roger Cabo from Tuesday's live stream. And is it possible to insert an effect in the sidechain before it hits the sidechain? So what we could do, let's just set up a new project here, and Harry was kind enough to send a diagram so I would be less dense and understand it a little better. And I think I understand what he wants to do. So let's say if we have an audio track here, so let's say we call this kick. And let's say we have another audio track that we'll call bass. And let's say we want to have our bass sidechain, like it's, if we want it to come, so we add a dynamics. Let's say we go to a compressor here. And at this point, let's say we set up our sidechain, and we can see that we could have our kick set up as a sidechain. But I think what Harry had indicated, which I think I understand now, is that maybe we want to run plugins in between the sidechain input and the sidechain source. So let's say now what we could do is I'm going to take this, and let's say I want to add it to, let's say I want to take, so we're going to take that. So I'm going to take like the kick and route it to a group. And let's say on this group, I could have different effects. So let's say, okay, I wanted to have a delay. I wanted to, or an EQ, whatever, like some different effects going on. And at this point, what we could do with the bass, when you go to the sidechain input, and I think if I'm understanding it, when we go to the sidechain input, we could choose this to go to the group instead, and we could have different effects on the group in between the sidechain and the bass. So Harry, and maybe if Roger's on, let me know if that is kind of what you were looking for, Roger. I think that was from the description. So give that a try and let me know. So instead of just sidechaining it to the source, you could send that source to the group and then send that group as a sidechain input on the bass track. Okay. All right. And this next question had just, I think I had this. All right, so it says, hi, Greg. Hopefully you can help out with this example, MIDI files included. So I revisited our Apache SX and had the idea to quickly get some of the ARPs done with it, but I'm encountering an issue. Not sure if it's a bug or me doing something wrong. I did a bass pattern, 1 bar, bass trance 01 MIDI. So I think I have that here in this particular track. So let's go ahead and just listen to this. Okay, so we had... Okay, so let's say we have that. It says I did this bass part. I dragged this into our Apache SX example of what it looks like. It can be seen on the screenshot below. Our Apache SX preset also attached called bass01.xml. So then I lay the longer bass note sequence to play this ARP pattern, single notes, also the included bass notes to play example, notes to ARP example mid, and it goes out of sync very quickly. Also tried to simply holding down the notes with the metronome enabled, same issue, out of sync, not sticking to the pattern. I tried every option under the ARP style, same results. All right, so let's say if I just take this pattern, that was kind of the genesis of this. All right, and I want to take, so I dropped this pattern into this instance of our Apache, and I just put like a single MIDI note here. All right. So, and I'm just going to take a quick... All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and play. And let me just knock this up. An octave or so. All right, I'm just going to make sure that this starts on the beat. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and play this. And I'm going to have my input quantize on. So I wonder if we just take this particular pattern. I know it says 1 bar 4/4, but I think it may be that the pattern might want to be like, let's see, if we drag this pattern, I quantize this particular note so that it's starting at the same time, and I'll drag this over. And let's see if that makes a difference. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I thought I had it kind of synced up a little earlier, but it seems like, let me just, I'll do it on this retro log, sorry. So it might be starting it off late because the very first note is delayed. So let's see if we do this, if it's going to sync. So, maybe if you have the chance to see if you have the pattern where it starts on the downbeat, because I know it says that it's going to be one bar of 4/4, but maybe it's needs to actually kind of but that seems to be playing consistently, so I just maybe did the sort MIDI sequence by pitch, so turning that off, that seems to play a little better. I'll play around with it more if you want to send me another email. And we had another question from John Costigan. And he had kind of emailed. So I think if I wanted to import tracks from a project, and he said he had one with a drum. So I think maybe I put it on the desktop. Let me just see. Maybe it's still in my downloads folder. So let's say we have this all Groove Agent SE patterns. And John, when he was importing it, it wasn't importing the actual parts. So let's say if I just wanted to import these tracks, and again, I'm going to have events and parts selected. On the destination, I just have these set to new track. And let's come over here. So we have Ambience 1, Dancehall 1. So I'll hit OK. And I'm just going to do this with a new project here so we could see it a little easier. So let's do import tracks from project. Let me hear my son playing bass in the background. He's bowing Europe's Final Countdown, which he picked out in his first week of playing bass, actually. So let's come over here to open. Let's do these two tracks. And again, events and parts are selected in channel and inspector settings. So come here and all the parts just kind of import normally. So maybe, John, if you could let me know if you're doing something differently, but it seems to kind of work as expected. And when I open the project as well, I think this may have been created by Jazz Dude. Yeah, they all kind of show up directly there. All right, so a question again. It says, hi, Greg. Again, thousands of thanks for your patience, kindness, and expertise during live streams. My question, since please in Groove Agent, how to program and save some drum patterns in 7/8, 3/4, 5/4, etc. I mean, with time signature other than 4/4. So, anytime that we have come here, let's add a quick instrument track. Okay, so I'm going to switch my meter to 3/4. All right, so, if you want to, I will just come here. Let's have it extract the names. All right, so, if I want to do 3/4, I could just... So if I want to just take that part, so once we're here, now we can. So, I mean, you could do different meters and program it. Now, if it's actual, I'm not sure if it's like just creating a drum part in different meters, or if you want it to now, you know, so let's say if we take this into Groove Agent, so let's say we go to Pattern Pad. You know, we could just drag the event. Now, if you're doing it in the full version of Groove Agent, let's take a look at that, because you could actually, I think, program patterns directly inside the full. You know, so now we go to patterns, and you could, again, just come here. So let's see if we could set our meter to, you know, 3, 4, 7, 8, whatever. And then you could just kind of program away directly here. And then so you could do program just kind of like that. So, and again, the programming is just kind of done directly inside of, in the full version of Groove Agent only. All right, so we had just a question. It's from Jan. It says, I have a Chord Nano Pad 2. See attached picture. 16 velocity sensitive pads to control play and stop. Can I also assign pads to control shortcuts, macros? So yeah, so let's come over here. We'll imagine that I go to my MIDI remote here. Let's say we go to my Nectar controller. So let's say, you know, I want to add. Sorry, let me just close that out. All right, so let's say I just want to take my pads. And let me just see if. And then once you have, so we'll just come over. So, and as you would, you know, just add different, let me just try some other buttons here. It's not liking my, but once we have these, all you have to do, Jan, is just go to the mapping assistant, and then any of the objects you can map to different functions, or if you go to key commands, all of your macros can be triggered directly from the NanoPad controller. So once you kind of hit set up the mapping assistant, so once we go to add a controller, we could just say, okay, I want to do, you know, new MIDI controller, set up the input and outputs. And then all these can be freely assigned to any functions in the program. All right, let's go back. I think we have maybe a couple more minutes, see if we get one more question or two in. Thanks for all the great questions. See, we're at 156 likes, so it's great. Okay. All right, so we see from Benny, every time I start, Cubase Reference comes up with a missing plug. Once Cubase is running, then it works. Why is that? So maybe I don't know if you're starting with a particular, if you're starting with a template, if you're starting with a template and maybe the IR isn't loaded, or, maybe that could be it. But let me know if you're starting with a template, Benny. All right. All right, so we see a question. It says question where it says no editor open. Can we have a new tab that's Media Bay? So let's just see. No editor open. I don't know if it's. I mean, there is. I don't know. Not sure if you are accessing the media bay from here on the right hand side, or so. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so we have a question from Jose. I think this is more about mixing, but how do you control, modify LUFS of your master? I always seem to get out of target. Let's say minus 14. One trick that you could do, like if you're, a little bit under, let's say. So let's say if I want, like this is my mix. One trick you could do is just go to the, if you go to audio and then go to processes, there's a normalize. And then you could actually set a particular, so if you're like, I was at minus 13 LUFS, I wanted to be minus 14, then you could just type in, say, minus 14, and then you could just normalize to a particular LUFS value right there. Okay, so with that, we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for making the 250th Club Cubase live stream such a great event. I saw we have lots of people, so I think over 2,600 people kind of tuned in live during the live stream, so that's wonderful. I want to thank everyone. And again, just everyone that's part of the community. I really enjoyed spending the last 250 live streams, spending time with you, sharing knowledge. And, again, I want to thank Jan. I want to thank Jazz Dude, Agent K for all their support and help, and everyone that makes it such a wonderful community. And I look forward to doing 250 more. So everyone have a great weekend. Please stay safe and healthy. Talk to you soon.